Good morning, Year 3. It's Thursday, the 11th of February. Before I talk to you about the English lesson today, just to remind you that the new spellings are on this week and to ask you to just check the weekly planner for some helpful advice about the spelling rule. Okay, so when you get your word sheet printed off, you will notice that there is a spelling rule, and then there's usually a little bit of information on the weekly planner for Thursday to say what the rule is. So make sure you check that out this week. Okay, so today's lesson we're going to focus on fronted adverbials. One of my absolute favourites, because if you can put this in your writing, it can break up a paragraph of text and you can use it really creatively just to get your work, get the flow of your work and to vary your sentences. So we're going to look at fronted adverbials to write our descriptive sentences. Before we do that, we need to know a little bit more about fronted adverbials. So the starter is for you to go to the Oak Academy, who I think do such a great job of explaining so nicely what each of these grammar terms are. So you would go to the same page that we were on yesterday when we were looking at word classes. This time I want you to go to lesson 4, please, to explore the functions of fronted adverbials. Enjoy that lesson because I think it makes it really clear how we use adverbials. There's a link on there as well. Then take a look at this beautiful picture. This is called the Garden of Life. I just scroll down slightly just so we can see. So you've just got a slide. One of the teaching slides has just got this on here. Take a moment to have a look at what you can see. So it is a garden. There's lots of animals, lots of creatures in this garden made from plants and shrubs and hedges. It's quite beautiful. So I'm going to read you a story starter to try and get those creative juices going so that you can just come up with some fab ideas for sentences. Let's have a look. In the Garden of Life, nothing was quite as it seemed. During the day, everything was peaceful. In fact, the garden was completely silent. The only sound that was ever heard during the day was a gentle whispering that seemed to be carried on the wind. A sweet melody of nature, celebrating the beauty of the earth and all creation. The lady of the garden seemed to be sleeping. She lay there, motionless, all day. Then, as the sun began to find its resting place beyond the clouds on the horizon, and darkness crept over the garden, an enormous green eyelid suddenly opened. She was awake. Beautiful idea, beautiful idea. You could go on to write a whole story to say what happens next, couldn't you? So I'm not going to ask you to do that, don't worry. Instead, first thing I want you to do is the piece that I've just read through. Have a look. Can you see any fronted adverbials in these paragraphs? If you can, put a circle around them if you've got this printed out, or just make a mental note of what you can see. I think there are some, I know there are some. Hopefully you can see them as well. When you've done that, take a look at some examples that I've got for you. So a fronted adverbial goes at the beginning of a sentence and it describes the verb in the sentence. It describes where, when or how something is done. So 3 different types of fronted adverbials. And you use a comma before the main clause. So in my first example, during the day, comma, the animals sleep. So my main clause is very simple, a simple sentence, the animals sleep. And then my fronted adverbial is giving me some information about when the animals sleep. So during the day, comma, the animals sleep. You might like to have a little go yourself at putting a fronted adverbial in front of that main clause. If you want to, pause the video now and replace the phrase, the fronted adverbial during the day, with one of your own. Okay, so if you've had a go at doing that, you might have come up with something like during the night, the animals sleep. Or early in the evening, the animals sleep. Or until morning, the animals sleep. Anything to do with time. So when it happens. Second sentence, I've used another one that describes when something's happening. So after sunset. I've underlined it to show you that that is my fronted adverbial. I've put my comma afterwards because this next bit is my main clause. The quirky lady comes to life. I told you that I would be using the word quirky this week. That's our word of the week, meaning peculiar. The quirky lady comes to life. That's why it's in blue. It's word of the week. You might want to pause the video and do something similar and just verbally in your head use a different fronted adverbial and then the main clause. Do that now if you want to. Okay, so, excuse me, you might say instead of after sunset, early in the morning, or during sunrise, or before sunrise. So you might have used a similar fronted adverbial. It's really easy to do, but very effective. Don't forget the comma. And then our third sentence changes slightly. Instead of saying when, so it's not a fronted adverbial related to when, this one is where. So in the middle of the garden, comma, the water poured from the hand. So you could have a go at doing one yourself using the main clause, the water poured from the hand. Pause the video in a moment and think of a different where fronted adverbial perhaps to use in your sentence. Okay, pause the video, have a go now. Okay, so if you've had a go at doing that, you might have replaced in the middle of the garden with underneath the bird of prey, the water poured from the hand. I think it's a bird of prey. Let me take a quick look and remind myself. Yes, underneath the bird of prey, the water poured from the hand. So I've used another fronted adverbial, just a position, a where fronted adverbial to start my sentence. Don't forget the comma. And then the next two sentences are linked with fronted adverbials to do with how. So our first one, with a burst of speed, the horses galloped away from the pond. So my main clause, the horses galloped away from the pond, and I'm giving a bit more information about how they galloped with a burst of speed, comma. And then my sentence underneath, carefully, the fox tiptoed across the lady's hand. Again, I'm saying how the fox is doing it. He's tiptoeing carefully. So these are fronted adverbials relating to how. So there's some examples there of where, when, or how. I think you could quite easily come up with one of your own using my main clause, the fox tiptoed across the lady's hand. You could probably come up with a different way that the fox tiptoed or crossed her hand. If you want to do that, pause the video for a moment, have a go at replacing that fronted adverbial. Okay, so you might have come up with other adverbs such as heavily the fox tiptoed across the lady's hand, or quietly the fox tiptoed across. Any of those ly words would work, wouldn't they, if they made sense to a fox tiptoeing across. But you could have come up with anything really to describe how it was being done. So I want you to do some of your own. These are my examples. You've hopefully had a chance to just play around with some of your own. Your task today is to write some sentences about that lovely picture. The mild task, your challenge is to write 3 sentences. So just a simple main clause and then a fronted adverbial with a comma in front of it. I would like you to do 3 because I want you to do 1 with an adverbial describing where, 1 with an adverbial describing when, and 1 with an adverbial describing how. So one of your sentences will have an adverbial about when something is happening. One of your sentences will be about where it's happening. and one of your sentences will be about how it's happening. So that's it, just 3 sentences. Of course, you can put in as much description as you want, so you can add extra detail in the main clause, choose some lovely verbs, add some adjectives to your nouns. That's up to you. That's the mild activity. The spicy activity is the same, but my challenge for you is to write 2 sentences for each. So 2 for where, 2 for when, and 2 for how. And the hot challenge is a little bit different. The hot challenge, I thought that some of you might want to go on and maybe continue that story. So going back to that story starter where the lady just opens an eye, you might have an idea for an extra paragraph that you want to write. So have a go at writing it. That would be a brilliant thing to read if you want to send that through. Use your imagination to maybe talk about what happens next. However, don't forget our objective is fronted adverbials. So I'm asking you then that some of your sentences, not all of them, because then that would mean that they're all looking like the same type of sentence, so not all of them, but some of your sentences in that paragraph should start with fronted adverbials. Think about doing the 3 types. So one of your sentences will have a where, one will have a when, and one will have a how. So 3 different types. Try to get them in. You might also have a go at trying to get in our word of the week, quirky. Okay, so have some fun with these and play around with them a little bit. You might write it down and then go back and think, oh, actually I can improve it. It would sound better if I rearranged it or perhaps chose a different fronted adverbial. Read it out loud. That often helps. That's a good way of checking that it makes sense. Okay, enjoy it and make the most of this. I think it's a great picture to use for ideas, and I will be back tomorrow with our last lesson of the week. Take care, everyone. Bye.